Okay, so we're going to talk first about the hemimetabolous insects. So mayflies, Ephemeroptera, dragonflies and damselflies, Odonata, stoneflies, Placoptera, and true bugs, Hemiptera. They are all hemimetabolous. All right, so the first is the order Ephemeroptera. Ephemeros is Greek for meaning lasting one day. And so what this means is you have an ephemeral winged organism, Ephemeroptera, right? And these adults, they only last a few hours to a few days, and their sole purpose is to mate, lay eggs, and die. They don't even have functioning mouth parts. They don't eat at all. And the adults are sometimes called imagos. You probably have seen them before if you've spent time on lakes and rivers. They're beautiful, delicate flyers. They often swarm. But as larvae, they live for many months to many years underwater. And so this is what their larvae or nymphs look like. A few different varieties. Often they have 3 cerci, but that's not diagnostic. The trick is that they always just have one claw, one pretarsus, okay? They are often grazers or shredders, meaning that they graze on algae or they shred up organic material. A few of them are predatory. Here's a joke. I don't have anyone to laugh at my jokes. I try to make jokes in video lectures anyway. So this is basically a mayfly reading the newspaper, he sees birth, and then obituaries on the next page. It's not really true because they are laid as eggs and they live for many months to years underwater. But if you're someone who only sees their adult form, it will seem like they all were born on one day and they died the next day, right? Or the same day. Moving on to Odonata. There are 2 suborders of Odonata. The first is called Anisoptera, the dragonflies, and that comes, the word odo comes from otis or tooth. So they have some pretty crazy teeth, and I'll show you why. They are predators, both as adults and as larvae. They're voracious predators as adults, right? They're like the B-52 bomber of the insect world. They zoom around and they can like capture, yellow jackets on the fly and just eat them. They're amazing, right? The same is true for their larvae. They are monstrous. So, and the reason they're monstrous is that they have this crazy lower jaw. There's a video you can watch of this linked below that shows this jaw in action, but I'll do it for you. Okay, so basically imagine you're this larvae and you have a mouth, right? Like an insect mouth. Well, your insect mouth not only does this, it does this, right? Like a really big jaw that extends out. And not only that, it can grab things way out here. It can grab something and pull it back into its mouth and then it can eat it. They're really cool. So their relatives are the damselflies, Zygoptera. You can see they're a little bit more slender, both as larvae and as adults. The way you can tell a damselfly from a dragonfly as an adult is that the dragonflies have their wings out, and a damselfly always closes its wings behind its back like this. Dragonflies can't do that. Okay, they are also voracious predators. You can see this lower jaw again extended out. It's crazy. But you can also see that they have these appendages on the back end, which are caudal lamellae that sometimes act as gills. Okay, and dragonflies don't have those. So they're slenderer and they have those caudal filaments, but still voracious predators. And here's Placoptera, the order Placoptera or stoneflies. Plectos means veined or braided. And that's because of this really strong wing venation that you see in the adult. Okay, so their larvae can be easily confused with mayfly larvae, but the trick is that stoneflies always have 2 claws, so 2 pretarsus. And they're mostly predators, but some of them are detritivores. So we don't have as many grazing stoneflies, but there's some really cool stoneflies out there. So first one I'm going to talk about is called Capnia lacustra. It's critically imperiled lake snowfly, And what's crazy is that its adults don't fly, they stay underwater. Both adults and larvae live at over 100 meters deep in Lake Tahoe, California, which is crazy. Okay, I'm going to show you another picture of these guys. Another one is called the Becoloptera elongata, which also has aquatic adults and is found at over 100 meters depth in Lake Baikal, Siberia. I couldn't find any images of these ones, but what's really cool is Lake Tahoe and Lake Baikal are sister lakes. And I was lucky enough to be a part of the Tahoe Baikal Institute in the year 2000, which was kind of an US and Russia science student exchange program. But at the time, I didn't know about these cool stoneflies, or I would have asked somebody. So here's a picture of Lake Baikal. It's really long. It holds 20% of the world's fresh, unfrozen water. The whole lake is about 400 miles long, which is not quite the length of California, but getting close. And this is a picture of it freezing solid every winter. They actually would lay the train tracks for the Trans-Siberian Railroad across the lake in the wintertime. And here's a picture of this Lake Tahoe stonefly up close. What's crazy is that it gives live birth. You can see all of the larvae, even some larvae like up in its head capsule before it gives birth. And then here you can see the first instar actually developing inside. Those you can see are the eggs starting to develop heads and things. And then here it's laying a full larva, right? It's not laying eggs, it's laying a full larva, which I think is just crazy. Okay. This is my friend Sudeep Chandra. He studies these organisms at Lake Tahoe, and he works at the University of Nevada in Reno. So a couple more cool Placopterans are the Grippoturgidae, and their larvae are actually terrestrial. So these are, again, stoneflies. You can't even see him here because he's covered his body up with sand as camouflage, and they're found both in Patagonia and New Zealand. And Alejandro Vera studies these guys. He published a paper in 2008. This is another cool type of stonefly that you find on glacier ice. And Joe Gersh and his team study these guys in Glacier National Park. So some really cool stoneflies out there. All right, moving on to the last hemimetabolous organism we're going to talk about, the order Hemiptera, the true bugs. Hemi meaning half wing because only part of their wing is membranous. They're mostly predators with piercing, sucking mouth parts, and a lot of them have rowing or swimming or skating legs. Okay, so this is a giant water bug. This is the male. He carries the eggs around. The female oviposits, lays her eggs on the male, and then he protects them until they hatch. This is a Notonectidae, a back swimmer, has really feathery legs for swimming. And a Geridae is the family of one of the families of water striders. They can make sounds, particularly these guys, and a lot of these organisms can produce venom. Okay, they can also, some of them breathe air and crawl out on land. In fact, giant water bugs are known in the desert Southwest to sense impending flash floods. So if you're ever picnicking by a stream in the desert Southwest and you see giant water beetles running out of the stream and up the hill, you should move because it's very likely a flash flood will come down and ruin your picnic quite quickly. Here is a giant water bug I found in Arizona when I was doing my research, and I kind of caught him in my net along with these two little tiny fish, and I was like, oh cool, I'm gonna watch him for a while. So I put him in this tub, and it immediately ran over and sucked the life out of that fish and then started eyeing this one. So I quickly dumped them out as I was worried that he was gonna kill this other little fish too. They are voracious predators. And so we can consider them somewhat vampire-like. They can prey even on vertebrates. So things like fish, snakes, and frogs. So here is a fish, a snake, and a frog. Oops. How many of you have heard of Annie Dillard's Pilgrim at Tinker Creek? There's a really cool scene where she's sitting on the creek, just kind of like at one with nature, and then she sees this frog, and then it just like turns into kind of like a deflated balloon of a frog. Well, it turns out one of these guys was sucking the life out of it as she watched. Okay, so we're gonna move on to holometabolous insects. Take a break if you need to. We're gonna talk about caddisflies, Dobsonflies, aquatic moths, true flies, lacewings, and beetles, okay? So one of my favorite orders is Trichoptera. Tricho means hairy wings, so there's hairy adult wings. For caddisflies, they're mainly shredders. Some of them are filter feeders. And they're related to moths. You can see they look somewhat moth-like, but it's the most species-rich order of aquatic insects. And what's really cool is they can spin silk webs and build silk sleeping bags that then they can attach all kinds of things to for protection. So you can see here's a free-living caddisfly with no case, but a lot of them create cases out of, this one's out of leaf material and out of sand and out of other things. Caddisfly larvae, like this one, can sing and they can spin webs like spiders underwater. Most of them have a single tarsal claw, which helps to identify them as well. So there's a really cool video that's linked below that shows you how they use this basically double-sided sticky tape that they pull from out underneath their chin to build this silk nest or case and attach things to it. And they're very particular about what they use to build their cases out of. This stuff is basically like double-sided sticky tape that works underwater, and so there's a lot of companies trying to figure out how it works. And they will also sometimes just stick other organisms onto their cases. So this guy is mainly built out of little pieces of aquatic plant he's probably chewed off, but he decided to throw a few freshwater clams on there just for good measure, right? You can also give them materials and they'll build their cases out of whatever you give them. So here's some examples of different types of cases that they make. Only one species makes a spiral case, and I have specimens for you to explore with your microscope of this. It's called Helicocyche. But other organisms will build cases out of sticks and wood and grass and little bits sometimes of moss or algae, rocks, shells, whatever, right? And so if you give them gold flakes and turquoise, they'll build their cases out of whatever you give them. So there are actually quite a few artists that use caddisflies to make cases and then sell jewelry. And you can see they have an aesthetic sensibility, right? They put all the turquoise ones in a line. Why would they do that? That's not random, right? They have a sense of style, I'd say. Here's one that I found in Arizona that had literally just taken these chunks of this leaf and built its case out of it. Like I found the leaf and I found the guy right next door. So basically it was stitching together a quilt for himself. All right, the order Lepidoptera related to the order Trichoptera, moths. There are a few moths with aquatic larvae. Lepidos means scales in Greek, and it's because adult moths have scaly wings. And most of these aquatic caterpillars feed on aquatic plants. They tend to have 5 pairs of prolegs. They're little sucky legs, just like a caterpillar, right? They're basically little stumps with hooks. They're not jointed, articulated legs like arthropoda, right? But they're called prolegs, little kind of suctions. And here you can see that they also build cases for themselves. Some species of aquatic moths. One species is actually aquatic as an adult. Here you can see this. So this is the female and it's wingless and it lives underwater. And this is the male and it has wings. I don't know how they mate. I didn't figure that part out. I just learned about this from the book. But Accentria ephemerella feeds on the Eurasian water milfoil. So it's used as a biocontrol agent to control this noxious weed. So they must come together in some love tryst somewhere. I just don't know how it works. Something to look up, I guess. We're moving on to the order Megaloptera. Mega meaning big because of those big wings. Each of those wings is like as big as that guy's finger, right? Huge. They're very large as larvae as well. They have big mandibles. They're definitely predators. But then as adults, even with these giant kind of mandible tusk things, they actually like to suck on nectar. So the adults feed on nectar. I don't know why they have those tusks. Maybe to protect themselves from predators. So we have a lot of aquatic monsters I talked about today. Dragonflies and damselflies and hellgrammites are major predators. They have these larvae that have extendable lower jaws. Dobsonflies have these giant mandibles as larvae and adults. Kind of scary, right? So a lot of, I think, inspiration for the movies comes from aquatic organisms like these. Moving on to aquatic true flies in the order Diptera. Diptera die for 2, means they only have 2 wings. They don't have the normal 4 wings, 1 pair of wings. And the second pair has been reduced into these little sensing organs called halteres. So they help the fly stabilize their flight. The adult mouth parts are often adapted for sucking, sometimes for piercing. I'll show you some pictures of some friends I know you've met before. And the larvae often lack sclerotization. Sometimes they have head capsules, but usually they're just like wormy, like, you know, squishy bodies. Maggots, right? These are aquatic maggots we're talking about. The larvae also often lack jointed legs, but some of them have prolegs. So here are some of the most common Diptera larvae. We have chironomids, okay, they look like this as larvae and like this as adults. Black flies, really cool. They have these cephalic fans for filter feeding on their heads. This is an adult black fly. You don't want to hang out with these guys. They basically like land on you, and then they have these mouth parts like circular saws that cut into your skin and make a little blood bubble, and then they lap it up, okay? Really not fun. Mosquito larvae, okay? These guys are dangling from the surface tension of the water. They breathe through a respiratory tube that's basically connected to the air, okay? And then they can swim around. As adults, of course, you've probably all been bitten by a mosquito. You've only been bitten by female mosquitoes. Female black flies and female mosquitoes need blood meal. They need a blood meal to produce eggs. The males don't bite. The males are pollinators. And then a crane fly is like a skeeter eater. You know, those big guys that bounce around your ceiling sometimes? This is the adult. As a larvae, they can be huge and squishy, and they're really cool. Okay. These are some of nature's vampires. We'll talk about some others, but the blood can make for very nutritious meals. The females need blood to make the eggs. Giant water bugs are kind of like vampires. They can suck the life out of prey. And oh yeah, this is where I talked about the Pilgrim at Tinker's Creek. It's really great. It's a great book if you haven't read it. All right, I'm going to talk about a few more orders and then we'll be wrapping this up. So the order Neuroptera are the spongilliflies. Neuron means sinew or tendon, and it's because they have this pronounced venation on their wings, very sinew-like. The larvae are wholly aquatic, and when they pupate, they form this really cool kind of net structure covering the pupa and protecting it, and then they turn into a spongillifly. The larvae associate with aquatic sponges, which is why they're called spongilliflies. They're related to lacewings. The order Choleoptera are the beetles. Coleos means sheath, and it's because the outer wing is hardened. They only have one membranous wing. The outer wing has turned into what's called an elytra. And when they fly, they open up their outer wings and then they can fly with their inner wings. You've probably seen a ladybird beetle fly like that. They can be predators, grazers, detritivores, and parasites. Some of them can walk upside down on the surface tension of water in a lake or pond. And they often pupate on land, but then some return to the water with bubbles of air that they breathe. Some are aquatic as adults, like these riffle beetles. And this is a predaceous diving beetle larva. And then this is a water penny, really cool organisms. They can really stick themselves to the surface of rocks. Some beetles are parasites. This little beetle parasitizes beavers. Okay, so here's Castor canadensis, and they feed on secretions of the castor glands, which are found near the cloaca. beaver do not have an anus like a normal mammal. They have a cloaca, like a bird. Isn't that weird? And so it's not really like an anal gland, but these castor glands are really interesting. So these guys feed on the secretions of castor glands, but we use the secretions of castor glands. And anytime you eat something that says it has natural flavoring in it, might be castoreum. It's been used as a flavor enhancer, particularly for raspberry and strawberry flavors specifically. So the raspberry and strawberry flavor, of course, comes from the berry, but the flavor enhancer, it enhances the flavor. Ugh, I don't know. It's a little bit creepy. Anyway, this is Platyspilus castoris. And it's a very funny looking beetle. It looks kind of like a flea. All right, so that's a lot of the freshwater macroinvertebrates. This is an image. I'm going to send you one of these images, a laminated image. These are illustrations by Claire Miller, who was a student at Evergreen in 2016. She did an awesome job. And we learned about some monsters, some vampires. Next week, we'll learn about some zombies. All right. Great.